for my friend Heather. It's called Taking Out the Garbage. She told me she knew it was time to leave her husband when her only thought was that she'd have to take out the garbage. I watch you over the table, deep in the paper, sports section claiming your attention, face clean shaven, wearing the aftershave I have told you I hate. You appear as if blurred, features distorted so I no longer recognise them or you. Short back and sides replace the ponytail, new steel-rimmed glasses, and you've lost weight. I begin to collect the breakfast dishes, your toast crumbs, coffee dregs and marmaladed spoon, my herbal tea, muesli-swept bowl. On impulse, I dye my hair fire engine red, so red that it screams. You still haven't noticed, and I already take out the garbage.
This is called Feeling for Change. I wrote this, I've been working in China for earlier this year, and I was on a bus. It's amazing how many people they can fit on buses in China. Anyway, I was on a bus, and it was the middle of winter. It was very cold, lots of snow and rain everywhere, and we were in a traffic jam in the middle of the city. So I wrote this from the back of the bus. His face presses the window. Waiting for his stop, he fingers the halo of mist around his mouth, almost drawing pictures. An eye, a nose, perhaps. But a smile would be too revealing. A smile might whisper to the crowd pressing in where he's from, where he's going. He wants to be somewhere he can see inside his own interior instead of looking out through this cold and misty eye into congested city veins as they hemorrhage, bleeding down footpaths, spirals around drains. Our nature is to flow, and although he judges harshly, his judgments are subject to the same laws, and they will in due course also change. The city does not belong to him nor he to it, neither king nor servant. He's just there in its midst, waiting for a wheel to turn, ignoring the windows weeping, tears on their way to far-off crops, waiting for the drawing of pictures to reveal he doesn't know what, but anything at all could mean something, waiting for a crowd of mouths to tell him what he may not want to hear, his fingers in the air, feeling for change while he's waiting for his stop.
Picket fence optional. She was never comfortable at weddings. Partly, it was dressing up in your Sunday best, mingling with people you had never met before and never would again, sharing no common interest or bond beyond that of knowing the bride and groom. Partly it was the bad food. Beef for the men, chicken for the ladies, the 80s music you had to dance to, and the DJ with a particularly loud liking for the village people. Partly it was being single and trying to find a man, any man, to drag along as a date, knowing that everyone knew he was just a friend. Mostly, it was seeing two people who believed they were in love. She knew by past experiences and observing vast quantities of friends, relatives, and even her parents, in 10 years' time, over 65% of them would be sitting in a lawyer's office, fighting over visiting rights of the 2.3 children, house in the suburbs, picket fence optional, and who had sole custody of the dog.
And this one is called Country is Dead. Nothing pleasant in her manufactured eyes, glassy inhabitants in a body like windows of logged country house, where the spinach is home grown, and the only medication for country, asphyxiation, when scratched dandruff falls to the ground, not like the snow on cabins in Christmas flicks, but with her fingers that flick, boredom on her once wooden floor. Manic thunder growls from the cloud in her head, calling to the cloud in the sky, rumbling for another sound.
Breaking the news. I hold the phone tighter as my sister's voice fades into static, then silence. Picture her walking the backyard, trying to outpace the news she has to tell. She talks of a growth in her belly, and I instinctively put my hand on my own, feel my softness as I imagine what lies within hers. She has birthed 4 children, now something else waits its time. She talks of scans and tests, promises me she's staying positive, and her voice drifts, snags on fear. My hand on my stomach turns into a fist and I want to hit out, belt this shadow out of her. She tells me it's okay, that she loves me, something we have never said to each other before. And as she hangs up, my hand is still pressed uselessly against my own belly.
A lot of you will realise that it's not something I normally do, is read my own poetry at my own gig. But I will read these 2. They're quite short. One is called, the first one is called Years Later. And if we reach the day when we meet again, what should I do? Kiss your cheek? Say, it's been a long time? Tell you that we were both wrong? Yet, if we do meet again, it would mean that we are still both alive, survived, in spite of each other. How did we manage that? And a rather short piece called Hemlock. And some of you will understand this and some of you won't. Never mind. Hemlock. I have heard it said that if Socrates was alive today, he would be Oprah Winfrey. Fortunately for us, Socrates is dead.
Bliss. Bliss is 5'7", achingly thin, strawberry plump lips and mirror eyes. She keeps her dreams in a mahogany chest by the bed and casts her thoughts as easily as dealing cards. She lives in a palace of crystal promises, all too aware of their sharp intent. At night, the mattress dips and sways beneath her as her husband's paws land on breast and thigh. Snuffling kisses down her neck begin his dance of love, his quick step. After, as she listens to his deep breath, turnings of a snore, she decides that happiness is a state like Queensland, overrated and too expensive to live in.
This is a musical poem. This is the shrinking and your 10 o'clock shadow is roughing my face to rawness. Will you grow a beard or shave it off? either way will be fine with me. Until then, keep your jawline out of my line of fire. If I'm to have gravel rash, I'd rather create it myself.
I wrote this just recently because I was talking to someone and said I'd been married for 28 years and nearly together for 30 years. And the first thing this lovely young lady said was, "Wow, you must have so much in common." So I've called it chalk and cheese. To say we are chalk and cheese would be to undermine the cliche. He is coolly analytical, logical. I put into poetry what I struggle to understand. He listens to the Arctic Monkeys and some weird-ass band from Amsterdam. I believe that David Bowie is the best singer-songwriter ever. He can never find his keys or phone. Knows they are here somewhere. My phone is always in the second pocket of my handbag, my keys on the shelf to the right of the front door, exactly where I placed them. He raises his voice, yells and stomps around the house, slams doors. I keep things to myself and sulk and sulk and sulk. He is sociable, spends weekends visiting friends, family, anyone, anywhere. I would rather hibernate alone at home after being polite to hundreds of strangers all week. Yet, when his hand engulfs mine and he traces circles on my palm, when I see his face in the crowd knowing he is waiting for me, it all makes sense.
Connected through a shattered prism, two sides of the same coin, atheist and believer, each seeing the other through a glass darkly, the evil twin, the mirror image of themselves, each seeking the same goal, a better life for themselves and others, each locked together by their common humanity in the embrace of the ages. Misunderstanding, intolerance, jealousy, hatred, war, each denying the other the kingdom they seek themselves, never realizing they are connected through that shattered prism. What they wish for the other is what they obtain themselves.
And this one's based on a true story. My husband and I took my mother-in-law, not my idea, on a holiday to South Australia for 3 weeks because her husband had always promised her he'd take her. He died and son felt guilty, so we took her. It's called Still Life. They stop for lunch in a dry riverbed under a river gum that hasn't seen water for much too long. Put out folding chairs, eat sandwiches of white bread, cold lamb and green tomato pickles. Drink coffee from the thermos, homemade fruitcake studded with walnuts. The stillness broken by a crow's unoiled call and rustling leaves that remind the younger one of rain. The older woman pulls out pad and pencil, places the gum so gnarled they twist among themselves. Lines become the stone bed, shading hints at the red dust that stains their world. The other watches as the car appears, a chair added, figure sitting on it, an older figure, square of body, sketch pad in their hands. With a final flourish, she scrawls her name, closes the pad. She has drawn herself alone. The younger woman walks into the dryness, hands clenched into fists, tighten. Eyes shut against the water that wants to trace her cheek, knows the dry ground would absorb each drop, leave nothing to show. They drive in a quiet as grinding as the heat dancing outside the car. The young woman holds a steering wheel, white-knuckled. The older woman, face turned to the window, squints against the summer. The quiet broken as the talk-back radio talks and talks into their silence. And this one is for my nephews, Ryan and Harley. It's called Constellations. I wake in the grey light of pre-dawn to find the 7-year-old crawling into my bed for a snuggle. His octopus legs limp it tight, arms hold me snug. He talks of not being tired, not being naughty, so Santa should really come that night. His brother, 9 turning 10, tells me he is too old for early morning cuddles with his aunt. Begins to talk of the solar system. He points to one of the lights in my room. If that light was the Earth, that would be the sun and that the moon. We talk of rockets and space, robots on Mars, and whether Santa's sleigh would travel that far. He crawls in the other side of the bed, hugs me as the younger boy leaves. Soon the call of cartoons scurry through the hallway. The older one follows the lure. I'm left wondering about the weight of stars and the void they leave when they are gone.
This is called Anchors Away. Driving home from the airport alone is surreal. How do I know for sure that the real me is here in the car and not on the plane with you? You see me now more clearly than I see myself. This is what I fear from love to disappear into another, so that when they are absent, I am too. Guess this sounds like an anti-love poem, not anti, just discombobulated. I don't much believe in romantic love anymore, but this is something else altogether. There are more rooms in the house than I remembered. The doors make a peculiar clunk when I close them. The living room rug is still curled up at the edge where we didn't get round to pushing it down. The TV's muttering, heater is buzzing, and I am floating. When did you become my anchor? Thanks.
He communicates in gestures and conspiratorial whispers. To him it's real, to me it's just a game. And everything he's being accused of, you'd think you'd know his name. He's done 3 times the crimes of Jesse James. Now he's had a rough trot right from the start. His story would just break about anybody's heart. When he was young, his mother didn't want his brother and he. So an orphanage had him by the time there were 3. And to make matters worse, they sent him overseas. Those damn bureaucrats will do bloody damn what they please. Then Grandma came, took Big Brother home, left the little fella all on his own. And wherever he went, he was the littlest bloke, the target of bullies and the butt of their jokes. But he never let 'em see him cry. He held it in, he'd rather die. And a good pool game ain't just a sign of a misspent youth. In Squeaky Tail's name, he climbed on every rich man's roof. And see those lines in his brow, they just didn't get there just anyhow. But fighting conscious late at night, full of hate and pain and fight. According to the boys in blue, he's a member of a tasty crew who robbed a van and then took flight, and to the heat they all sat tight, and they did all right, they did all right. And according to the boys in blue, he's been known to pull a hit or two. He hid in the shadows and shot through, didn't they spew? And according to the boys in blue, according to the boys in blue.
I was lucky enough recently to get one of the poems into the Australian Poetry Centre's Dear Dad anthology called PJ, and actually First time my dad ever heard me read a poem was I read the poem out at the open day on Sunday, and Dad, being Dad, decided a poem about him had to be cool, so he actually came along. So it took me all this time to figure out if I want anyone from my family to hear me read, write something nice about them. It's called PJ. You taught me how to bait a hook, that bees drunk on fermenting nectarines tickle your palm, to enjoy reading aloud and to become as one with the earth. You taught me to drive a 3 on a tree, column shift, baby blue Holden station wagon, to enjoy a good port, that rules are to be obeyed and which ones can be broken. You taught me that grief is okay, to believe in love, that quietly spoken doesn't mean having nothing to say.
Space. To think, to develop, to dream. The location of life after the verbiage subsides. Generator of all that matters, never hurried. Disruptor of articulation. Opportunity to inhabit. Breach. Opening. Void. Breath. Yes. Yes.
Part of my job is I do a story time for Littlies, and it's interesting, all the songs and stories and rhymes I actually grew up with, taught my own children, they're no longer considered PC. Humpty Dumpty doesn't have a fall anymore. Did you know that? Baba Black Sheep cannot be sung because he's black. It's all these amazing things that you've got to, are really constricted. I don't follow those lines because I thought as long as no one dubs me in. So I wrote this, it's called Innocence.
It's on television.
All those mothers will now complain. Humpty Dumpty falls in her story time. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water under adult supervision. There was no accident, no incident requiring medical aid or the homeopathic remedies of vinegar and brown paper. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty joined a gym, cut out all fats and carbohydrates. Now does infomercials for the lemon detox diet. The world I grew up in no longer exists. Giants are now termed overly large people. Dwarfs are extremely short of stature, and the wicked old witch is now a senior practitioner of other faiths with an alternative lifestyle. If a princess were locked in a tower, her family would be charged with domestic abuse. Girls no longer wait for Prince Charming, and kissing a frog is so closely linked to licking a toad, it's considered the first step into drug abuse. We swaddle our children in bubble wrap, protect them from monsters, both real and imagined, yet keep searching for their innocence. Thank you.
I'm Mull, and the hunger for peace swells as I edge closer to you. You, living, talking, sleeping. And as the ravine between us gapes, the beguiling rope swings. It dances innocently over the gorge below, and so I begin the journey across the divide. A ginger step, another, teetering, swaying. Your brow furrows, your smile narrows, eyes quickly downcast, a sickening tear, a sudden gust. An awkward lurch, twine breaking, unravelling, cries stifled as words, frozen, their language lost, surrender to an icy wind. Tumbling, scrambling for a foothold, a tuft of grass. Courage dwindles to swift retreat and the inevitable climb. Cowering on safer ground, the air now still, the familiar taste of bitterness pervades. Thank you.
I sat next to God once on a train heading into the city, stopping all stations except Camberwell. He wore faded jeans, KT26s, and a T-shirt that said Mary's Homeboy. He was quiet, seemingly content to stare at the window into backyards of damp washing. Why, I asked, knowing he would understand. He spread his arms wide and shrugged. He got off amongst the suited clones of Parliament, then turned to me and said, "Because I said so."